One thing I say quite a lot is that we're not going to vote our way out of this. We're going to collapse our way out of this. Now, normally that's me doing the pessimistic thing, saying how you're not going to get elected. We won't vote for a remigrating party. And if we did, it wouldn't happen anyway. They wouldn't be able to do it. That's the pessimistic side, the unpopular side. What I'd like to look at here is the more optimistic side, how I think that collapse will accomplish it, how we can do it via collapse. And in particular, I'd like to use the riots in Belfast from a few weeks ago, a bit under a month ago, as an example, to shed a little bit of light on it. Particularly, I'd like to look at what I think the qualities are that they displayed: a hardline ethnocentrism, a certain amount of tactical skill, and also surprisingly humane methods with no. I don't think there are any serious injuries to members of the public, certainly, and no deaths. And try and imagine what the body count would be if the state sent soldiers door to door to try and do remigration. The meat-fisted state, what would they do? How humane would that be? I actually, to my surprise, I like the mob. I'm not the sort of person who would normally want to run with the mob, far from it, as you can probably guess. But what I notice is that in recent events, after the Southport riots, the Ballymena riots last year in Northern Ireland, is that the crowd seemed to behave remarkably humanely and with a firmness and skill that surprises me. Now, I'm aware I'm aware that there have been loads of people who have sung the praises of the mob only to get eaten alive by it, and I'm aware that the crowd need responsible, clear-headed, selfless guidance. And that's probably not going to come from me because I would prefer to avoid power just for selfish reasons. But so perhaps we can get guidance at the moment from what our friends in Belfast last month did. And in particular, why I think what they did shows that we are quite likely to accomplish, I would say, 99% plus remigration when the decadent state collapses. Now, to that end, what I'd like to do is to look at two news reports. This one is an ITV news report, a 3-minute clip from that from the On the Spot guy, and 1 minute from this video from this Sky News report there. So if you bear with me, and I'll bring it up. Hold on.
O'clock, I started to notice smoke billowing from the east of the city. So myself and the camera operator and our team headed towards that direction. And when we got there, we came across large groups of people at the bottom of one of the main roads that leads into the city. And at the further end of the road was public transport alight. It was quite a long bus that was completely gutted and was actually exploding at times, which really just shows the danger that people who were deciding to be there last night were putting themselves in. There was actually some people we witnessed, even when the fire service was trying to put it out, by putting more fuel on the bus to try and keep that going. So there was real determination from some people last night in quite a volatile situation to really make it as dangerous as possible. Now, it wasn't only just that bus that was on fire. We noticed homes then start to come under attack later in the night. Other colleagues were out and were able to capture some families actually being evacuated from their streets close to where this bus was being burnt. There was one striking picture I actually saw this morning of a family being bundled into a police Land Rover as their home was attacked. So this wasn't just people setting fire to things with people not in them. This was obviously intimidation of trying to get people out of homes and trying to create that fear, I suppose, in communities. So that was in the east of the city. We then travelled to the north of the city where roads were being blocked. And one thing I noticed last night as well is that when we got to the north of the city at a main interchange between a road that leads to the south and one that leads to the north, there was actually people blocking both intersections with blue bins. And at that point, there was one police car with two police officers. And I actually got chatting to one of the officers, and he said that basically we feel helpless here. We are depleted in numbers. If we were to go and try and stop any of this violence happening, if we were going to try and let any of those cars through, the numbers of people there carrying out those acts is far superior to any of the police on the ground. So that really just shows how stretched police are here at the minute. And I think also shows that there's a real fear if there is any more violence here, how the police then respond to that. And we do know this afternoon that there have been calls for further protests. Political leaders here have, of course, called for calm. We've got an updated statement.
Okay, so the basic facts are that Stephen Ogilvie gets attacked with a knife, loses sight in both of his eyes, really vicious attack. Local people then riot, and what you find is they burn a bus, and then they go elsewhere, put out blue bins, block the road, and then immediately they go and clear foreigners out of their homes to get them to move. And the police say there are too few of us and too many of them for us to intervene effectively. So that's the sum of what he's saying there. Now I'll go on to this next report here now. This the Sky one, the Sky News one.
I've heard so many stories this week that I never thought I'd hear, but this is how some people are now living in this part of the UK.
We were terrified, and my young children will keep asking me, Mommy, are they going to come to my house?
And they thought that they were going home to masked men burning their home.
It's just dystopian, to be honest. Like, you'd never think you'd have to do that in the 21st century.
This is madness.
They're scared.
Yes, they are scared.
A barbaric knife attack on Monday triggered a wave of violent racist attacks by people furious about immigration. Families ran as they were burned out of their homes. There were vehicle checks by masked men and lists of houses that might be hit next. There were letters through doors telling migrants to leave. You can patch up houses, you can replace windows, but this sinister, overt racism leaves far deeper damage.
Okay, so the facts there are kind of similar. They go a bit further. You get the bus getting burned, you get the roadblocks, you get people getting checked in their cars, you get lists of foreign occupied HMOs around, and again, people turfed out of their homes. Now, what I think that talks of is quite a lot of coordination and tactical awareness amongst those the rioters in Belfast. That this was fairly focused. I think it was violence, but I don't think it was mindless violence. Now, if you look at this map, that is where most of what was on the news got filmed. So if you see just around there, that's where that big bendy bus, that glider bus, got set on fire, and people were pushing more material onto to make the fire bigger. I think people, and you had sort of young fellas, teenagers, chucking stuff at the police, I think. And then if you go along about 150 meters, what you have is two streets there. One is, I think, Lendrick Street, and the other one is McMaster Street. Those two streets seem to be the ones where people were going down and setting fire to buildings to get foreigners out, to clear foreigners from their area, basically to separate out the populations, to get them out of their area. And that is in tune with an old Provo method, a method from the Troubles in Northern Ireland, where you get the really young men to create grief, to distract the police with bin fires, maybe a bus fire, throwing rocks, whilst the more experienced operators go in the back behind the lines and do the business. And that's what I suspect was happening there. So I think there was fairly rapid coordination there. I think that was that was planned, that was tactical. It was violence, but not mindless violence. And if you look there, I don't want to play that because I don't want to get anyone into trouble in case I show any faces, but those are the blue bins being wheeled out in order to create more of a roadblock. So I think that was tactical. Now, then if this fella, this priest, he's going to expand upon what the Sky News report said. Let me just play him. It's only a few seconds.
Online content is extremely virulent and very. I mean, there are, for instance, there were lists, houses with multiple occupancy lists being circulated online. which meant that, and of course, so if you walk, and those houses are lived in by all sorts of people, if you walk around the student areas in Belfast, there are signs in the windows which frightened students have put up saying, students live here.
Okay, so that is online lists or social media, the internet being used to some purpose. I think fast, getting up lists of houses that they want cleared. Again, tactical awareness, speed and firmness, decisiveness. Now, if I go, and that I think that firmness is displayed further in what happened with the roadblocks. Now, it appeared to be from the road going south, I think was Crumlin Road, and the road going north, I think was Oakley Street, just around there where that marker is. I think that's where they were checking cars, seeing who's going where. So road checks, traffic stops. Again, that's a sign of organised force. I would say organised violence, but violence with a purpose. And it spread rapidly as per this Guardian article there. Hold on, if I can do that. That's the guy, how Belfast stabbing was the spark to a fuse loaded with grievance and provocation. And they're talking about a Romani gypsy and a Sudanese refugee being removed from their houses. Now, I'll just read this paragraph. This shows that it spread quite far quickly. So foreigners out chanted some, others spray painted F Islam with crosshairs on walls. By 10 p.m, smoke plumed over multiple locations: Oakley Street, Crumlin Road, Lendrick Street, McMaster Street, Newton Ards Road. In places there was a carnival atmosphere with people posing for selfies and drinking beer. I think that's the Guardian wanting to say these are mindless thugs. They're all mindless thugs. There may have been thugs amongst them, but I don't think that they were leading. Outside Belfast, mobs targeted torch targets in Portadown, Dundonald and Newton Abbey. The fire service received 256 calls and attended 62 incidents. Now, I think that kind of behaviour is a feature of these situations where you get mini collapse. What these riots are is mini collapse. The authority of the state ceasing to run. There is a gap in a certain area for a certain time, for a brief period, you get collapse conditions. And what people do is immediately they go very firmly, aggressively and decisively for basically separating out the populations, which is the first step in any remigration process. And people do that voluntarily, very cheaply, very fast, and surprisingly humanely, so far with no one killed in that process. So the other example from Northern Ireland is Portadown, a month ago, nearly a month ago, and which I prefer to what happened in Belfast. I'll go through why in a minute. But also after the Southport riots a couple of years ago. And I'll just play you something from Middlesbrough, which shows something similar happening. Hold on.
Bloody hell, mate. Fucking hell. Fucking hell, mate. Jeez. Whoa, fuck. I don't know why we're running. People just started sprinting. There must be at least two. Bloody hell, what's going on? Fucking hell. People are running. I don't know what's happening. People are just running. This guy's in camo. Bloody hell.
That was from Middlesbrough a couple of years ago during the Southport riots. It's been up on X as being something to do with the Northern Ireland. I don't think it was. And but again, what that shows is people very quickly going down streets where foreign populations live, or there are foreign occupied HMOs, and harassing them out of their properties, getting them to go. That happens fast, it happens aggressively and quite decisively. I think sometimes smashing windows like that, I don't think that's necessary, so I don't think it's right, but I'll go through that in a minute. Now, I don't think it's right setting fire to people's houses and smashing the windows like that. The reason I don't think it's right is because I don't think it's necessary. What the people of Ballymena last year, that they managed to accomplish quite a high level of remigration and escalating level of remigration with very little violence. relatively very little violence. So first of all, they started by saying, we want the Roma gypsy families that have come in and have raped someone, sexually molested a girl, we want them out. Then they moved to Filipinos, and then to getting Eastern Europeans to go. So escalating levels of firmness and exclusivity as regards remigration. And that happened in a relatively very peaceful way. What the pattern seems to have been the knock on the door, you need to move, or even just marking the door somehow. And then if people didn't go, if people didn't take the warning, then torching their cars, i.e. not burning their houses. Burning houses, that is serious. People die. That's why you have the crime of arson with intent to endanger life. That it is serious. Don't do that. It's not necessary. It wasn't necessary in Ballymena. I don't think it was necessary in Belfast. I don't think it was necessary to smash those windows in Middlesbrough. So my point is, it can be done without danger to life. You may say that doesn't matter now, but it'll matter to the next generation that we kept our hands clean, that we used basically a minimum of force. Blood may be satisfying if you're in a bad temper, but it is very expensive. It's bad for the other person shedding the blood, but it's bad for you if you're the person causing the bloodshed. You'll pay for it one way or the other. It's just an expensive thing to do. So don't do it. I don't think remigration actually will need a very high degree of violence. I think there are three stages to it. The first is population separation. I think that will happen naturally. I think populations will self-segregate. What is important, and I think that will be easy in areas where we are the majority, as it was in Ballymena, as it was in Belfast. You can see people skedaddled from their homes under the threats that were put to them, and I don't think a lot of violence is required there. Secondly, also what I'd say about that, well, the second thing is establishing enclave borders. So if you get self-segregating populations, where does the border come? What you need is a hard border. I think foreigners will naturally do that. They will triumph. They are not capable of doing anything other than triumphantly saying, this is our area now, this is the boundary, we're going to police it. All we have to do is say, fine, yep, we agree, we will police that boundary as well. When you establish those those enclave borders, I don't think it's necessary to fight over every street. I think that is unnecessary. I think what is all you need to do is to go as far as you feel like a secure majority. If the other side start fighting back in a really determined way, that probably is a sign that you established the boundary there without going into more war and killing, with the aim being of avoiding civil war, because it'll be much easier to squeeze, or to allow those populations to squeeze themselves out, than it will be to fight for every street. And that is the third part of remigration. That is getting those foreign enclaves to empty out back to their ancestral homelands, or wherever it is they want to go. And the basic rule is allow them to squeeze themselves out by stewing in their own juice, in the juice that they have made for themselves. And a good guideline, and don't be Israeli about it, that is a good guideline. Think to yourself, what would Israel do? And don't do that. That's a good guide. Don't do that. You don't have to bomb it to rubble. You don't have to kill tens of thousands of civilians, men, women, and children. You can simply hold the line and allow them to give them a bit of tough love, allow them to live in the conditions they've made for themselves in their self-segregated enclaves that produce nothing, that have no amenities, that have no sources of wealth creation, that have no way to preserve their own health or to survive, no means of survival, no means of disease prevention, drainage, water, water taps, etc. Now, I don't think that. What I think we're likely to see is a modern form of siege which will be different from the traditional form of siege. The traditional form of siege is you isolate an area, then you go in for attrition of that area, and then you go for assault of that area. I think we can stand back and allow those areas to self-isolate, as I think they will do. Imagine a Pakistani enclave saying, right, we are now declaring UDI in our own areas. And that is self-segregation, self-isolation. Then I think they'll move to self-attrition. So the normal techniques of starvation, thirst, disease and demoralization, I think that is something that those foreign enclaves will inflict upon themselves, because they will see their means of survival disappearing. And finally, I think there will be self-assault, because they will make the conditions within their enclaves very bad. There will be constant extreme violence amongst various different sects. So people who are from the south of a certain village in Mirpur will will have lethal warfare against people who are from the north of that same village in Mirpur, or within their own enclave. So I don't think it would be necessary for us to assault them, because they'll be assaulting each other. So I think that is the modern form of siege, where you allow them to carry out the siege upon themselves. That is not the Warsaw Ghetto. That is not Auschwitz. That is simply allowing them to standing back whilst they stew in their own juice, and then offering them a way out of it in the form of a one-way airplane ticket, which I think they will take. Now, I mean, yes, a lot of their number will need severe punishment, but general bloodshed doesn't serve that, doesn't accomplish that. That's for another day, to talk about how the war criminals get punished. Okay, so that that deals with what I think a better technique is. Now, another reason underlying why I think collapse will be such an effective way, or will provide such perfect conditions for remigration to take place, is because the authorities just have no clue as to how to react to the situation. So if I go back to this that ITV news report here, so if you see that was where the guy on the spot there was talking. Remember, I played the 3-minute clip at the beginning. Well, then you get a discussion between this fellow who used to do news at 10, don't know who he is, don't care, and that fellow Robert Peston, I think he's a lefty liberal, that's my understanding anyway. And basically, what they're saying, I mean, they try to explain it. What they're saying is these are desperate refugees, poor refugees. They're desperate to come here. We can't turn them away. Wouldn't it be terrible, etc. And that what really underlies the riots in Belfast, they're not trying to get foreigners out of their area because they want foreigners out of their area. They're doing it because of the economy. They're doing it because of social services. Those are the things that are, quotes, underlying all of this. So that's a common theme that everyone in the establishment comes up with. That when you say this is what you want and this is why you're doing something, you don't mean it. What you're really doing is complaining about the fact that the state isn't big enough, isn't giving out enough handouts. No. When someone tells you, take them at their word. Which when someone riots and tells you, you certainly can take them at their word. And they go on to talk about you can't stop illegal immigration because we're not the sort of country that's going to have soldiers on the border turning people away. Well, we'll see about that. And then a bit of Trump bashing, and then a bit of Brexit bashing, that Brexit increased illegal immigration, blah-de-blah-de. Okay, so I think completely incompetent to respond to a situation of collapse like that. Now, if you think that was bad, I'll play you a minute from this Channel 4 report. This one really is dire. I'll just play you a minute of it. It's amusing. And it just shows how out of touch and incompetent to deal with the situation they're going to be.
The Tates, all of those sort of people who are in their algorithms constantly polluting their minds with, they don't read newspapers. They're not, they're not going to listen to us. They'll never listen to this podcast. But they're getting their misinformation from those places. And it's very easy to say to young men who traditionally from loyalist communities have very low educational achievement and therefore very little prospects when it comes to further education and employment, that the problems that exist in your life are not caused by you. They're caused by that person 2 doors down from you. You convince very, very poor white people that very poor or hardworking brown or black people are responsible for the problems caused by billionaire white men. And that is what is happening, and it's happening quite successfully.
So most of it's like that. It's online media content, social media content. It's poor, uneducated, ignorant white people blaming poor, hardworking black people when really they should be blaming rich white billionaires, etc. So a liberal lefty discovers personal responsibility there. I think that's what she's trying to say in this instance. I mean, total dribble. There's no way the establishment can respond to collapse in any way. They won't be able to resist remigration at all. They'll be just eating their own tails. The one thing they did try to do, the thing they tried to pull out of the hat, as always, was an anti-racist demo calling for unity. That's what they do. The problem is the people who attend those are dying out because they're all of that age. And that's not going to work much longer. And those people will be totally useless in any kind of breakdown situation. So if I show you this, there was a demo, an anti-racist demo in Belfast. This fellow, Paul Doherty, I think he's a local councillor, proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with Belfast, blah-de, we stand against racism. And just look at that picture, if you can see that picture of all those heads there, and the comment, which is perfectly fair. A lot of balding and white heads, people who grew up in an era of actual peace, who haven't had to deal with the consequences of their voting habits and suicidal empathy. These people do not represent the future. Perfectly put, yeah. They'll be useless in any kind of breakdown situation. And then what you have here is this fella, Jerry Carroll. He's a member of the Northern Ireland Legislative Authority. It's hard to undersell just how large the demo, it doesn't look that large to me, but the demonstration in Belfast was today. It was one of the largest I've ever seen in the city, etc. That was an anti-racist demo. And the comment is, zoom in and take a close look at that crowd. It's full of women, boomers and foreigners. It is, by the way. None of them will win the war to come. The young white men setting fires, I don't agree with setting fire, but you know what she's saying, have a national history as conquerors and warriors. Remigration is the humane option. So, but it is not the only option. That's what she's saying. But basically, a demo like that is something the establishment can do whilst it has control. When it loses control, it won't be able to pull off a demo like that. Demos like that won't happen. They'll be mown over. No one will listen for a second. And as if to show their incompetence, 2 days later, I think that the Belfast riots happened on the 9th, and 2 days later on the 11th of June, you get this headline, government to intensify crackdown on illegal migrants in Northern Ireland. So it's basically saying that riot that we condemned, we said was just mindless violence. Yeah, well, it worked. We're going to give you what you want or what we think you want. And that is a crackdown on illegal migrants. The government is to intensify its crackdown. According to a government source, the Home Office is ramping up illegal enforcement efforts to track down, detain, arrest and remove illegal migrants. That's macho language. This will see a surge in intelligence-led operations, blah-de-blah, enforcement officers and border force personnel along the common travel area routes. All right, I think that's cosmetic, but it's a reward. It's basically saying, have another riot, fellas. That's what the government is saying. They're inciting that. They're totally incompetent to deal with the situation. So on that point, what I'd like to know is if there's anyone who lives in Ballymena or knows anyone who lives in Ballymena, have the authorities brought back those Roma gypsies that got kicked out last year? And have they moved any other Roma gypsies in there? Have they moved any other Roma gypsies out? I'd be really interested to hear. I wouldn't mind betting they haven't moved back in the ones who were kicked out. They haven't moved in any new ones. They may have moved out some of the ones who didn't get kicked out. That's my guess. Again, I certainly haven't seen a government minister saying, you rioted, we disapproved of that riot. We're going to make sure that it is not rewarded. We're going to make sure that it's punished. And I haven't heard a moment of that. So well, hold your breath for more disorder in Northern Ireland and other places. What I hope this shows is that how remigration, why we're likely to be able to collapse our way out of the situation that we're in, and how it doesn't have to be that violent, and in fact violence doesn't really add anything to it. We can do it remarkably fast. remarkably firmly and relatively humanely, without even a tiny fraction, a tiny percentage of the number of deaths that the state would cause if the state sent in the army to do it. So I think there is hope that although we won't vote our way out of this mess, we will collapse our way out of it. Thank you.